What is going on YouTube? Welcome to my first video on the channel. We are finally starting a designated reefing channel. If you guys don't know me, I have another channel under Jordan Harris, but there I mostly post car content for my S2000 and just some other stuff that I do incorporating cars. So if you guys are from that channel or you guys have seen some videos from that channel, I have had some like animal and reefing content on there. But after doing some thinking, and I had a subscriber comment and say that I should start a strictly reefing channel, I decided to go ahead and give it a go and just start building up another channel on the YouTube platform. Also, before we jump into the start of this video, if you guys want to see some Instagram content, I have my Instagram linked in the description below as well. So with all that being said, I hope you guys are here for the journey. We're going to be covering a ton of reefing content, doing reviews, and of course just looking at the coral, things like that. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's video. Alright, so as the first video of the channel, I kind of just wanted to go over the tank itself, what I've got in it, and what I'm using equipment wise. That way we start off on a good leg and kind of know what the basics are of the tank. So I think we'll start off with the aquarium itself. It is an Innovative Marine 30-gallon long all-in-one, so it's got a full chamber in the back for all the filtration and some of the equipment that I use to run the tank. If you're not familiar with Innovative Marine, they use a low iron glass. It's all rimless, and the tanks are just really pretty. They've got this black silicone which gives a nice edge to the aquarium, and just the viewing glass itself is just super clear. I got this aquarium secondhand. I think the 30-gallon longs run somewhere around $500 new for just the tank alone. I picked it up on Craigslist for, I want to say, about 300 bucks, which I thought was a pretty good deal. I've had the aquarium going for about 10 months, so we're coming up on the year mark. I didn't have much of the coral, if any of it, so everything that you see in it has kind of blossomed over the past few months, which I think is pretty crazy because I had only one clownfish in here for about 6 months. And then I finally got, you know, the kind of the water quality in check, and I got all the equipment that I really needed to get this aquarium boosted, and so all the coral now is doing really well. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn on some lights so you guys can see what equipment I'm working with and some of the gadgets that I have. So we got all the lights on now. The aquarium is in my room, so it just sits on my dresser, but the dimensions is 36 by, I want to say, almost 16 by 13 tall. Display portion is only, I think, like 12 inches of it, maybe 11, and then the chamber in the back is about 3 or 4 inches. You only get about 11 or 12 inches of display by 36, and then, like I said, 13 tall. So the water volume in the display is only about 20 gallons, and then the water volume in the all-in-one, or I guess the sump in the back, is 10. So you kind of have to account for that in terms of fish. You don't want to overstock the display because you only have 20 gallons up front to work with. Now, equipment wise, starting, I guess, inside the tank, as you guys can see, there's no power heads in the aquarium. I actually had one on this side and I had one on that side, but I ended up taking one out because it was too much flow, and I only had the one on the left pushing water on the back side of the aquascape, but I ended up taking that one out too because I felt like it was too much flow. So I'm just kind of sitting with the return pumps that's creating the flow inside the aquarium. I'm considering buying a smaller power head to go on this side to do what the other one did, but the power head that I had was just too strong, so I'm gonna have to eventually go out and buy another power head that'll be better suited for this setup. Flow wise, what we're working with is the stock pump or return pump that comes with the Innovative Marine aquarium. It's something probably like 300 gallons, 400 gallons per hour with return, and it is enough to make a ripple effect on the surface. That was mostly what I was concerned about, was the surface agitation. But inside the aquarium, we don't have much water flow going around. On top here, we've got 2 of these Amazon lights. Now these are the Hypogara Aqua Night LEDs. Underneath you can see there's 3 pucks, and in each puck I believe there's 3 LEDs. They put out a good amount of light, and these are at about maybe 60 or 70% intensity right now, and you can cycle through blues and whites. For $70 you can't really beat this light. It actually grows coral and looks quite nice on the tank, but eventually I would like to upgrade to something like a Kessel AP700, which would be overkill for this size tank, but I could turn it down to maybe 40% and have a longer lasting light. But for now, these lights run at about 12 hours a day. There's no ramping period on them. I just run them for 60% at that 12 hours, and that's pretty much what we've got for lighting. Now for heating, we've got a 100-watt Fluval heater back there. I set that one to about 80 degrees, and there's a reason for that. My room, for some reason, especially with this tank alone, I've never had an issue with tanks overheating, but for some reason this tank just likes to go over 77.5 degrees. So what I've done is put these computer fans on the back, and I have hooked it up to a thermostat down there, which I'll show you guys in a minute, and that helps me regulate the temperature. So if I set it at 80, if the tank needs to go up in temp, then it will. But if it overheats, which it typically does, the fans will kick on and they'll stay on until the tank goes back down to the 77.5 degrees that I have it set at. If we come down to the thermostat, you guys can see that this is my desired temperature. This is what the tank is running at right now, 77.5. And you can set alerts and, you know, where do you want the fans to kick on at. They kick on at 77.9, so it never goes over 78 degrees. And then the heater is set at 80 so that it never goes below 77.5. So it's usually around 0.2 to 0.3 degrees off from here, but it typically sits around the 77.5 that I have it set at. And there's just a probe that goes all the way back into the aquarium, so that you can obviously read the current temperature. Now moving on to filtration, since this is an all-in-one, as you guys can see, the water trickles behind here into 2 filter socks, 1 on each side. I've got carbon in each filter sock as well, and then I've got some Chemi Pure Blue on this side just to help with the phosphates. But other than that, there's no more mechanical filtration. It's just 2 filter socks and some carbon, and it seems to work pretty well. The water's, you know, as clear as I would like it, and there's no large particles in the water column. Unfortunately, I live in California right now in Santa Cruz, and there's been really heavy fires, so with having the window open, trying to get as much fresh air and oxygen into the room as I can, that also comes with having ash come into the room sometimes. So I will try to get the surface agitated, but I will occasionally see some ash or just particles on the surface, which does suck, but at the same time you can't really help it. I'd rather have a little bit dirtier, I guess, skim on the top than really high CO2 in the tank, so it's kind of a weird balance. I try to keep the window open sort of during the day and then close it at night, but it seems to be better. There's not a lot of containment on the fires right now, but it does seem to be a little bit better air quality lately. And I guess last but not least, for filtration, we have an Innovative Marine. This is their Nuvo Ghost skimmer, so it's their older version, but it fits in the 30-gallon long and the 25 lagoon. So it fits in this section back here. I did have to rig up this little bracket, or it's like a, I guess like a coat hanger, but I basically glued it onto the back of here, and that's why it sits at this height. And then you're able to adjust the cup with this red rubber band. It pulls out pretty good skim mate. I mean, it's not an insane skimmer, but at the same time, it's not a huge tank with a lot of fish livestock, so you don't really need that much of a, you don't really need to overkill it with the skimmer. So it does what it needs to do. It does turn off at night because of the noise, and I have to sleep with the tank in the room, but during the day, it does what it needs to do. And last but not least, for equipment-wise, we have an auto top-off, and to be completely honest, I'm blanking on the name for what the auto top-off is, but it's the Nano. With the optical eye here. It's in a really easy location, so I can, you know, clean it if I need to, or service it. We've got the tube here that pumps in the ATO water, and of course it's sitting above the water line so we don't get back siphon. That comes all the way down here, we've got the connector somewhere back here. It's a mess of cords behind that, but then in this little hamper we've got the auto top off bucket, and in there you can see, if you guys know Kalkwasser, you know that it mixes really dirty. So I'm dosing with Kalkwasser in the auto top off, and then I also dose magnesium as well. So that's kind of my salinity check, auto top off, and dosing system. That auto top off was, I think, like $130, and then of course a 5-gallon bucket with the Kalkwasser. It's a pretty good price for how much it saves you in maintenance. You know, including topping it off yourself manually as well as dosing. So I think adding an auto top off, especially the nano size, is a huge plus. Now, before we get into the livestock, just a maintenance regimen that I do on the tank. Like I said, I dose Kalkwasser in the ATO, and I usually go through a 5-gallon bucket of auto top off water once a week. And then I also do a water change about once a week as well, which helps replenish those trace elements and just cleans up the water a little bit. And besides that, I dose magnesium about 2 to 3 times a week. And then I feed them about 2 to 3 times a week as well. I usually feed them the pellets and flakes for the 2 days, and then the 3rd day I'll feed them mysis shrimp and some other frozen foods, and spot feed the corals along with that 1 time a week. So feeding's not too heavy. Like I said, the skimmer does a good job of taking all the large particles out of the water column, but the water changes really help doing that once a week as well. Alright, moving on to the livestock. Last but not least, I guess we'll start with fish. As you guys can see, these guys are not camera shy. We've got a pair of Ocellaris clownfish. I bought them separately, but at this point they've paired up. I want to say this one is the female, which is a little bit larger, and this one's the male. They're both pretty basic, but this one is a split bar. I don't think they sold him as like a specialty clownfish, but he does have a split bar, which I think is different and kind of cool. And just recently I picked up yesterday a pair of these bang-eye cardinals. This one's a little bit more shy, but they're starting to explore the tank a little bit more and come out. But this one is the bigger of the two, and he seems to be a little bit more confident. But besides that, that's all we have for fish. Future plans for fish, I don't really plan on getting any more. If I do, it would be something to help clean up the tank, like a blenny or something like that. So that's it for fish stock. For cleanup crew, it's pretty small as well. We've only got about 10 of these blue-legged hermit crabs, and they kind of just walk around and sift through the rocks and eat stuff. And then we do have, right back here, a sand sifting starfish that has gotten much more comfortable in the tank over the past week. Even though I've had him for a couple months, he does scoot around more during the day, and I've seen him on the glass actually recently, which is kind of interesting because he typically just stays under the sand bed. So that's what we have for cleanup crew and the fish. Now moving on to the coral, last but not least, we've got about 20 pieces in here. I think I counted it yesterday. I'm kind of an impulse buyer when it comes to coral. I don't really think about the placement, I just buy it and then kind of figure it out later. But we'll go over from left to right, and I'll show you guys each and every piece that we've got in the tank. So right here is a leather coral. This is kind of like a branch off from a Kenya tree, but it's much lighter in color. It's much more branchy. It's not even fully out right now. I mean, the lights are about to turn off, so it's towards the end of the day. But as you guys can see, it's a pretty big piece. I would say it's definitely top 3 largest, I guess, colonies in the aquarium. Right above it, we've got a colony of green star polyp. Super basic piece, but I mean, I love green star polyp. It's just super pretty. It grows rapidly, and it's not that expensive. So I have a couple pieces of that in the tank. Right next to that, we have the red Monty cap. This piece has just been a tester pretty much this whole time. It hasn't grown, but it hasn't died or bleached, so it's kind of just doing its thing and hanging out. It still maintains its red color. You guys can't really tell because of the lighting, but maybe that's a better angle. It's not as pink as it looks on camera, but again, it's not really growing. It doesn't have that white edge to it, so I don't know. We'll see what goes on with that. Right below that, we've got a large colony of these pulsing zinnias. It's all on one rock. This is something that I would probably break up in the future just so we can get a little bit more space and real estate in the tank. Right up onto this ridge, we've got a small piece of Kenya tree there, if it'll zoom, if it'll focus. And then it's attached to this colony of these green polyps or zoas with like a red-orange center. those are kind of cool. That was I think that was the first piece of coral that I had in the tank, so it's a little basic, but I think it looks good and it fills out the space well. Right below that, we have this toadstool, which from my understanding, it's just a green toadstool. I'm not sure the exact name. This one is probably my second largest colony of coral. It's a pretty big piece. It was pretty expensive. I did have to move it right before filming this, so it is a little closed up, but it's usually kind of out like a palm or a hand. But this one is large as well. Once it's fully open, it's about 5 inches across, which is super cool in a tank this size. And like I said, we're getting towards the end of the day, so most of the corals aren't fully open, but what we've got right here is a lighter tan bubble coral on the left, and on the right, from my understanding, is a Goniporia, and that one is just like a red pinkish, but it's not open at all right now. You guys can see the little tentacles, but it's usually open and flowing. And that's definitely one of my favorite pieces just because of the color. And right up here is what I've started to create as a Euphyllia garden. We've got a hammer coral there, a frog spawn, and another hammer, and they're all different colors. So I'm hoping once they're fully open and growing, they'll kind of mesh together and it'll look like one big piece, just different colors. And then right over here, we've got a large colony of Kenya tree, which again, like the pulsing adenias, I could definitely see myself breaking this up in the future and freeing up that whole space right there, because this thing across is probably 6 inches and it's about 6 inches tall, so that piece definitely could be broken up, given to some friends, or just spread out across the tank. And right below that, we've got an elegance coral. This one is kind of weird. It'll go through like a dormancy period for a couple weeks, open up for a few weeks, and then it'll close back up. So it's coming out of that dormancy period. It's finally open, but the tentacles aren't fully extended. I know these are pretty tricky to keep, especially the ones from Indonesia, so I've been trying my best to kind of keep an eye on it, and it looks like it's doing better than it was. But again, it kind of went through that dormancy period. It extended a couple times, but I mean, it's looking good for right now. And the color of it is amazing. I mean, it's got this really nice blue teal in the center, and the clownfish, this is one of the 2 corals that the clowns will host. Right next to that, we've got just a simple blue little mushroom that fell into that crevice. Hopefully that'll start growing. Right next to that, we've got a nice little mix of colonies of these zoas. We've got these green with green centers, and then above that, we've got these light green with orange or red centers. So flipping back over here, we've got a red acan, and right behind that we have the Duncan coral that it has split into 2 heads, which is awesome. So that's doing well, fully extended polyps. And right below that, we've got a green Recordia, and jumping below that, we've got some more green star polyp. And last but not least, we've got this purple hammer that's on this nifty little shelf, which I'll do a video on that shelf in the future. It's just a magnetic shelf, but it opens up a lot more real estate for putting coral in your aquarium. And that's pretty much it for the coral. At this point, it's pretty packed until I start putting coral on the sand bed, which I don't want to do. I kind of want to keep that super clean, but we're starting to fill it up with coral, especially once everything starts kind of growing into itself. So that's it for the first video and an overview on the reef tank. This is what we'll be looking at for the next few videos. I have plans of setting up other tanks, kind of redoing this one a little bit and adding some higher, more upgraded equipment to it. The things that I do want to upgrade eventually is the lighting. I am thinking of maybe going with 3 A80s or just doing an AP700 Kessel. With the AP700, I feel like I could use that on an upgraded tank. That's still 3 feet long, but maybe a little bit deeper, which is what I want to do. Upgrading to maybe the SR60 Innovative Marine, which is the same length, but it's twice as deep and like 4 or 6 inches tall or something like that. So that's definitely in the future. And then maybe adding on a Vortec MP10 just to get that random flow in there and have it and having the controllability as well, which I think is super important. If you guys have any questions or comments, please comment down below and follow my Instagram. Link is in the description below as well. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. I will catch you on the next one. Peace out.